Going now to Epstein, some new images of Epstein's Island villa that were released by the House Oversight Committee. Let's go ahead and put these up here on the screen. Let's just keep this one up here for a while. I just want everybody to sit with this. It's like a dental chair and weird, creepy masks that are all around. There are some videos and images of the bedroom, but I mean...
It's like faces of old men?
Yeah.
You know.
There's no
Who doesn't have a room like
explanation
that?
for that. There's no innocent explanation. Also, yeah, Larry Sell. Interesting. I wonder who Larry is there. In terms of his speed dial on his phone, these are some images. This is like a bathhouse, or it looks like a steam room maybe. No, not exactly sure. That was being used for storage purposes. That was on the island. We can continue a little bit here in terms of what we have from the island itself. Let's go to C2. Just a video walkthrough. I'd watched a little bit of this previously. It's nothing, explicitly groundbreaking, but I guess really what it comes down to is these images and others been released by the House Oversight Committee. Some of these are inside of these, so the Epstein files, the Epstein estate, and I really just think we should all sit with like the image themselves of, let's say, that creepy mask stuff that was there. You have the famous Bill Clinton painting. You have, all of the insane, like, weird sexual artwork throughout the East 71st Street villa. You have cameras, you have the design, the mansion. Now we have the emails, and we have personally read like thousands of the man's emails. Like the level of psychotic disposition this guy had in terms of his arranging massages and constantly like requesting photos from his assistants of girls and just like constantly be like, she's too fat or something like that. It's gross, right? And so you put all this stuff together and yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's just, and by the way, like I said, having read through a lot of the guy's emails, he micromanaged this estate to a way like you can barely imagine. Like he was constantly asking for updates while the compound and the island was being built, and he'd be like rejecting this and rejecting that. And so like everything there is his own aesthetic design and taste as executed by Ghislaine Maxwell. And it's like this empire basically of his, like from his own mind that was created combined with the birthday book. It's just pretty disgusting.
Yeah.
It's really, I mean, again, I think we all have to sit with like Eyes Wide Shut was real. Like weird masks of old men on the walls. Like there's no innocent explanation for that. I'm sorry. There's not.
It's
especially when you put it in the totality of everything else that was going on. All the houses and the book and the emails and the underage girls. Like it's open and shut. Okay.
There was also another photo that had a blackboard.
Let's put that up there. You can see.
Yeah, there's the blackboard. And it's hard to read those words, but it says power, truth, music, deception, intellectual, political, and then there's presumably names here that are redacted by the committee. So, who among us doesn't have this sort of thing on a blackboard somewhere in our house? I guess it's around the corner from the weird old guy mask and dentist chair room. Just normal stuff.
Power,
totally nothing to see here.
Plants, deception, So.
And here's the thing: is like if this was if that's it, that's all we knew about Epstein.
Right.
I mean, okay, he's a little weird, right? Okay, but. This is part of a larger portrait that we have at this point based on the investigations into him, based on what the survivors have said, based on the records that have been released, based on things like what Donald Trump said about how much he likes him young, and based on certainly the recent email revelations that have been dug into, in particular by Ryan, Maz, and Saagar, and other journalists out there like Jason Leopold, that, gives you starting to emerge a more complete picture of what's going on here. And the other thing with this is this continues to put pressure on the government and basically signal, look, we're not gonna let this go. We passed a law now. You have to release what you have. You have 30 days to do that. And, as you're preparing these files, whatever you're gonna release, we are continuing to get information from various subpoenas that we've used our power in Congress in order to provide some level of transparency to the American public.
Yeah, let's go and so the files thing is very interesting, from the NBC News tear sheet about asking for the status update. Because remember, the law requires them to release it within 30 days. And this was on November 19th that it was enacted. So we really only have 15 more days before this is all supposed to come out. They say that the Justice Department announced their investigation, quote, into numerous figures, including Bill Clinton and Larry Summers, in response to that request. Quote, in the interest of transparency and clarity, we request a briefing in a classified or an unclassified setting to discuss the full contents of this new information, but no later than Friday, December 5th, so that's tomorrow, as of the day that we're all recording this. The new law, remember though, could be thwarted if they are able to say that they can cite an ongoing investigation and redaction and overall, the process that they've gone about doing this, which is extremely clunky, and it makes it seem as if there's a cover-up. I also want to say, with the so-called Epstein files, everyone needs to be careful. Even what Ryan and I and Maz, what we've all gone through, this is a tiny fraction of what's in the Epstein estate, okay? That's nothing. We're just looking at emails from one particular Gmail and Yahoo account from 05 to 08. By the way, again, as I reiterated in our segment, the 05 email was created after the feds or after the police started looking into him. So what's in the pre-05 emails, right? What happened to that? And there's a lot of them that have been deleted even inside of this inbox.
Yeah.
And so then what about after, his conviction, his jail sentence, right? So there's a lot of stuff that still hasn't come out.
Well, the email you reported on where he's coming up with legal strategies and drafting this email. And he says, I have to assume the feds know about probably 20 underage girls. Right. Well, guess what would be in the government files? What did they actually know? How much information did they have at the time when they were convinced by, Epstein and his legal team, including Alan Dershowitz, that guys, this is really not, they're going to handle it at the state level. You guys really don't need to worry about this. How much information did the government have at that time when they did kick it to the state level and say, oh, okay, you guys down there, Alex Acosta, do your sweetheart deal, do your thing. Just as one example of the sort of things that would be contained in the government records. There's a lot there, and we have only gotten a glimpse of a tiny, tiny fraction.
Yes, absolutely correct. And I do want to put C4 up here on the screen just to reiterate this. This is, look, I'm not a financial professional. I have gone through a lot of his stuff, the financial stuff inside of the deals. I will say none of it seemed all that sophisticated to me. All the claims are about all these sophisticated hedge fund transactions. Maybe there's a different email. I'm just saying, from what I saw, it was very standard. Hi, Jeffrey, I'm raising money for X, Y, and Z, and I could use a few million, or somebody trying to buy some shitty movie studio. A lot of it also was directing Les Wexner charities. Nothing was very... nothing explained becoming a billionaire is really what I'm saying. And that's kind of the mystery, right? And so what the Epstein survivors have said is that they are supporting this Ron Wyden bill, which would force Treasury to turn over Epstein bank records. And I do want to give credit to Ron Wyden because he's actually been beating this drum now for a while. The banks and the Treasury departments are sitting on over $1 billion of suspicious activity reports that they updated after Epstein's death. All of those, that is the real stuff here, the wire transfers, because we have a very small slice, which I've cited before. The New York Financial Services Department put out a fine of Deutsche Bank years ago, I think back in 2020. And I did several monologues about it at the time. You can go watch. But it details the exact scheme through which he was wiring money to the Eastern Europeans. But again, this is just one bank. And he had bank accounts at JP Morgan Chase and all of these other high finance institutions where he was moving billions of dollars. That's literally 1.1 billion or so around in ways that should have triggered investigations by the federal government. So then you're okay, well, why'd the banks not do anything about that? You or I mean, has anyone, recently, I had to send a wire transfer from our bank account for business purposes. It takes forever. Yeah, they're are you sure you authorize? It's and that's us, like a small business. You can't just move money around the world. Like it doesn't work like that.
When I try to ride in an Uber in a town I haven't been in for a while, like fraud alert. Right?
Yeah, you're like fraud alert, right? You know what I'm saying? Like exactly. Like everybody, like when you interact with the world and the financial system, like I can't send a wire transfer without having to call the bank and be like, yes, I authorized this purchase. And they're like, well, what's the, have you been contacted by fraud? And this guy just gets to wire billions. Now, maybe that's just par for the course for billionaires. It probably is, if we're being honest. But at the very least, like when you're moving all this money through these banks, like they have to, KYC, know your customer laws and stuff, they have to determine, they're like, well, where did this money come from? It's a legitimate purpose, right? Are you money laundering? And so they clearly violated, in many cases, because they've been fined for it and they've been sued for it, a lot of their own internal guardrails. So like that, again, I know everybody wants to talk about the black book and, this client list, there's no client list, any of that. The nexus of it all, it's all in the money. That's the whole story from the intel. That's what made him useful. That's what made him powerful, is the money enabled everything else. Get access to that. And that's when I think you're actually you'll take down some real people.
Well, and we may get some progress on that just in the coming days. So in addition to these photos and videos, Robert Garcia, who's the ranking member on the Oversight Committee, says they're going to be releasing more financial records in the days ahead. So we could be getting some more information there today, tomorrow, over the coming week. So that is something to keep an eye on. And again, I think it's important to keep the pressure on. Listen, none of us, we're not Pollyanna here. We're not actually expecting the government to completely come clean and release everything. But, and we know that they've spent lots of time and close to $1 million taxpayer dollars going through these things to redact them and scrub them. I mean, I don't think anyone expects them to release anything that's going to be incriminating to the President of the United States, because they, they'll be out of a job if they do so. But still, like whatever comes out, whatever additional pieces of the puzzle, even if they're not about Trump and they're about other people, that's, it's a step forward. And so every time the House Oversight Committee releases more tranches of documents, it keeps the story alive, it keeps the pressure on, and it keeps the public focused on putting pressure on the government to follow the law that has now been passed by Congress and signed into law by the president.
Exactly right. And yeah, everyone's like, oh, why do they release this? It doesn't show anything new. I don't know. More the better, okay? The more you keep it alive, the more that people take an interest in this. That's one thing I have been very heartened by, is that even though Trump and MAGA and all of them want to move on, many of us came to this long before Trump was ever in the picture. It was never about Trump.
Long before the Democrats were super focused on it.
Yeah, by the way,
here the whole time,
when the Dems were all like, it's a conspiracy, it's anti-Semitic to say he was connected to, never cared then, didn't care now. We're just going to keep on keeping on. And there, by the way, shout out to Pablo Torre, our friend. He's been doing some sports angles in the Epstein story.
Really?
Yeah, he just did a segment on it yesterday. It was fascinating, actually. And so he will actually, I've been speaking to him a little bit. He should have more stories potentially soon on the sports angle. And so this is the fun part, is like, as this goes out, people with different niche areas can look into their own like spheres of influence. Hollywood, for example, I pointed out, this isn't my area of expertise, but I'm reading through and I'm like, yo, Epstein's getting all these invites, all these Hollywood premieres, like Michael Clayton and The Sopranos and all this stuff. I'm not a variety reporter, but some Hollywood person should probably go dig into that.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm just looking at Israel intelligence and
whoever
the actual case.
Pablo Torre of
whoever that
Hollywood
person
world.
is. Yeah, although I feel like Hollywood media is probably more compromised than anybody else. That's just my opinion.
Very possible.
Okay. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.